The presenting health professional has made every attempt to protect the privacy of patients whose cases are discussed, and we ask that you respect that privacy. If you have a colleague that would be interested in viewing this video, please send a request with their email address to grandrounds@rocklifemed.org, and we will send them the link. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Lifestyle Medicine Grand Rounds. I am Dr. Ted Barnett, founder and president of Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and I am so excited to have so many interesting people registering and showing up tonight. In fact, we have, last time I looked, we had people from India and Saudi Arabia and Holland and Great Britain and Singapore and Curacao, as well as about 20 different states registered for tonight's event. And let me just, I'm going to go through our slides here quickly. Our case tonight will be presented by Dr. Kerry Graff, Half-Hearted to Fully Alive, a case presentation. Any of you out there who are practicing clinicians, we'd love to partner with you at Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. We have several ACLM certified programs. They're listed below: the 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart, the LIFT project, and Pivio, which we facilitate on Zoom. And you can easily refer your patients to one of those programs by going to our website. And you can either download a hard copy that you can fax to us, or you can fill out a Google form. And if you do that, we will actually contact the patient and make the arrangements on your behalf. These are the programs. I won't go through all that because we do want to get to our program tonight. We have all of our CME programs are free because of a very generous donor. And unique, in addition to Lifestyle Medicine Grand Rounds being unique, we also have 2 other unique programs that you can receive 10 CMEs for attending a program with actual patients. So it's kind of good practice for running a shared medical appointment, and that's both the LIFT project for 10 CMEs and the 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. Our case presenter tonight is Dr. Kerry Graff, who's board certified in both lifestyle medicine and family medicine. She serves as the lead lifestyle medicine physician for Rochester Regional Health in Western New York and works to integrate lifestyle medicine throughout this large healthcare system. She is the co-author of 4-Leaf Guide to Vibrant Health, using the power of food to heal ourselves and our planet. Let's see here. Why is it not advancing? There we go. Dr. James Loomis is our guest panelist. He's the medical director of PCRM's Barnard Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and is on the clinical faculty at George Washington University School of Medicine. Dr. Loomis previously served as team internist for the St. Louis Rams football team and the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team, as well as tour physician for the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. And many of you may know he was featured in the documentary The Game Changers. He enjoys birding, running, biking, and swimming, and has completed numerous half marathons, and triathlons. These are our regular panelists. Dr. Robert Brakey, board certified in family medicine and lifestyle medicine, has been a family physician in Ann Arbor for 36 years and serves as the medical director for IHA's William J. Folletti Center for Lifestyle Medicine. As you know, IHA is a co-sponsor of this this event. He's also chair of IHA's governing board. He's also on the board of directors for 2 national organizations, Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group and PPOD, and has a special interest in employing lifestyle medicine approaches for disease reversal. And making her inaugural appearance as a regular panelist with us is Dr. Terry Stone, who serves as medical director and co-founder of Fresh and Savory Culinary and Lifestyle Medicine Shared Medical Appointment Pop-Up Teaching Kitchen at MedStar Health in Washington. Her current role at MedStar Institute of Innovation includes leading a team that supports health professional colleagues in the development of lifestyle medicine practices. Terry participates in several well-being initiatives and culinary and lifestyle medicine programs at the Georgetown School of Medicine and throughout the system at MedStar. As a past member of the board of directors of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, she is involved in addressing health advocacy, integration of health, lifestyle medicine, and health systems, and delivery of health equity to underrepresented communities. Dr. Susan Friedman is our case wrangler. She's board certified in geriatrics, internal medicine, and lifestyle medicine. She's professor of medicine at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and founding director of lifestyle medicine at Highland Hospital's Department of Medicine. She is RLMI's Director of Clinical Studies, a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Lifestyle Medicine Economic Research Consortium, and fellow of ACLM, and the author of more than 40 high-impact papers, which have been cited over 2,000 times, and also lead author of the American Geriatric Society's white paper on healthy aging. And that's me. I'm board certified in lifestyle medicine, diagnostic and interventional radiology, and I'm also the founder and president of RLMI. Also very proud to have been the lead author of American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Type 2 Diabetes Bill of Rights. So, half-hearted to fully alive, a case presentation. I will stop sharing and welcome our panelists and Dr. Graff, our presenter. So, welcome Dr. Loomis, Dr. Brakey, Dr. Stone, and Dr. Graff. Take it away, please.
Okay, it's great to have everybody here. Let me get my slides going. Whoops, and I went right past. Okay, I gotta just change this. Okay, so this is the role of lifestyle medicine after a patient has already adopted an optimal diet. So we're gonna call this patient Gary. My first visit with Gary was on 10/12/22. He is a 62-year-old gentleman, white male with morbid obesity, coronary artery disease, is CHF with an ejection fraction of 25, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and COPD. He had been discharged from the hospital with heart failure 2 months before I saw him, August of 2022. Patient specifically said he was sent home from the hospital to die. Now, he wasn't sent home on hospice, so he was exaggerating a little bit, but basically he wasn't really given a very good prognosis. He wasn't able to walk even 10 feet to get to his bathroom without being severely short of breath. And he has to wear a CHF life vest all the time. So basically this is an external defibrillator. And he was actually scheduled to have an implanted defibrillator done, but it had not been done. So he was sent home with this, at least originally when he went home. He got to see me because a family friend had told his partner. So he has a 35-year-long life partner. They never aren't married, but she's been very instrumental in his life. And she had learned about the Esselstyn diet, and basically the patient states that his partner is making him do this, and he had been doing it. So he had been doing it since he got home from the hospital. So at that point, he'd been doing it for about 2 months. And he's already had this huge improvement in his symptoms, much less short of breath with walking to the bathroom. He was actually down 60 pounds in those 2 months. His original BMI was 57.6. And he had been on long-acting insulin. And at that point, he was already off all 80 units of his long-acting insulin. And I'm thinking, why the heck are you bothering to see me? You already learned the optimal diet. You're doing great. It didn't make a lot of sense, especially because the guy lives 2 hours away. So he doesn't actually live in Olean. He lives down that way somewhere. But basically, you can kind of see how far it is away from us. So it wasn't seriously a 2-hour drive. And I'm like, you kind of got this already, right? So wasn't sure what I was going to be able to add to it. But so why the heck are you here? Well, PCP was not at all supportive of what he was doing. And actually his cardiologist wasn't either. But the PCP specifically was not supportive because she was worried he wasn't going to get enough protein. And the patient and the partner have been terrified because they have been doing all of his medication reductions on their own because they don't have help from anyone else, because nobody thinks that they should be doing this anyway. It's really kind of funny because in those 2 months, he went from barely being able to, walk across the room to doing incredibly better, but his PCP was still very worried about the protein. So another reason why they were here, every time he uses a short-acting insulin on the sliding scale that he had been given, he gets hypoglycemic. Well, he was getting 8 units for a glucose between 150 and 200, and it would increase by 8 units for each 50 of glucose above that. So, but he was reporting that the glucose is now only above 150 once a week. It's never going over 200. So we wanted some guidance with what the heck he should be doing with that. And then also, since he was started on isosorbide by cardiology, his blood pressure at home has been very, very low. And actually that in the day prior to coming in, it was 79/49. And he feels really weak and lightheaded much of the time. Well, it turns out he was only started on the isosorbide because they were originally going to give him sublingual nitroglycerin to use as needed, but he never really had any chest pain that was like that he could tell was cardiac pain through any of this. And so he said, well, how would I know when I'm supposed to be taking it? Because I never had that in the first place. So they just put him on isoscorbide and let him go. But ever since they did that, his blood pressure had been extremely low. All right. So we've got some poll questions here. And the first question that this brought up was, what is the longest time the patient should have to wait to get into an initial lifestyle medicine appointment? So everybody kind of pick their idea of what they want to do, and maybe we'll have the panelists weigh in on what they would pick for this.
Dr. Loomis, how long should people wait? A, B, C, D, or E?
Well, it depends. I mean, for me, it's probably going to be a couple months because I'm really busy. But but if someone, if you called me up, Ted, and say, listen, I've got a patient in DC who really needs to be seen tomorrow because really struggling, I'd see him in a day. So, but it depends.
Okay. Terry?
I would agree. I think the lifestyle medicine physicians in our practice are super popular and super busy, but I would say a day as well.
Yeah. And Dr. Brakey?
Yeah, I think the goal is always within a day, and yet with supply and demand, it not always feasible. So we do our best.
Kerry, why don't you continue, please?
All right, so I just wanted to kind of put my 2 cents in on this question. So this case actually changed our office policy, which was when somebody calls in and schedules a lifestyle medicine appointment, they're now supposed to at least be asked if they're already making adjustments that have required them to have some concerns about medication changes that are, critical. And then those folks we get in right away. We just figure out a spot for them and get them in. I definitely think we need to be getting these people in no more than 2 months. So we really don't want to be any further out than that, but really trying to get them in within 2 weeks or so. You get somebody who's motivated, you really want to get them tucked in right away, especially if they're motivated by fear-based motivations. You really want to assess that because you're going to lose the fear as a motivator within that first 2 months. So if you go any further out than that, you're likely to lose them. All right, so let me move ahead with the next. Okay, so current medications. So on his list when he came to me, this was after he came off 80 milligrams of long-acting insulin, right? He was on amlodipine 5 milligrams daily, atorvastatin 20 milligrams daily. I was a little surprised it was as low as it was for his history, but that's what it was. Entresto twice a day, furosemide 60 milligrams daily, isosorbide 30 milligrams daily, Januvia 50 milligrams daily, Jardians 10 milligrams daily, metformin 500 milligrams twice daily, methylprednisolone 4 milligrams daily. That was for his rheumatoid arthritis. The Toprolol 100 milligrams daily. He was on the Novolog insulin sliding scale with units increments of 8, starting at 150. Omeprazole 20 milligrams daily. Ranolazine 500 milligrams BID. I had to look up what the heck that was. So it's a CHF drug. It was on Trelegy and also Ventolin. He appeared older than stated age, probably 10 years older than he was. His eye contact was fair. He had a somewhat flat affect. His blood pressure was low in my office at 104/58, but not nearly as bad as it was at home. Heart rate 97, oxygen saturation was good. BMI was 52.6. That was down from the 57 that he was at the time when he was discharged from the hospital. So I think about first lifestyle medicine evaluation. I look at all 6 pillars. So I'm going to go through those in order here, kind of what I'm thinking about. So for fingers, which is toxic substances, he did not smoke, use any drugs or any alcohol at all. So that was really easy. He already gets an A+ on that one. Just keep doing nothing. That's perfect. In terms of forks, he was also doing great. So he completely adopted the Esselstyn diet. He was eating all whole food, plant-based, all the low-fat foods, none of the high-fat foods, no processed anything, no oil at all. I did put an A+ on this, but actually in looking at it, he's only getting 24 ounces of water. So he's a little bit water deficit. On the other hand, he's got CHF, so you don't want to fluid overload him either. So, but doing really, really well following the Esselstyn style diet. In terms of feet, he was not active at all at that point because he really, he had to wear that cardiac vest. And because of that, he couldn't do the activity, which he actually does. He actually does enjoy doing some activity, but it's swimming. Well, it actually isn't swimming. He water walks and he dog paddles. He doesn't actually swim, but he loves being in the pool, but he couldn't do that because he wasn't able to take off his vest. And he's got arthritic knees and he had very limited ability to walk. So now he's not short of breath so much, but he's unable to walk because of his knees. Sleep, he sleeps well. He needs BiPAP. He's got pretty severe sleep apnea, but when he uses his BiPAP, which he does faithfully, he sleeps for 10 hours and he gets good restful sleep. So I gave him an A+ on that one too. Stress is the next pillar. And I think about that in two parts. First is what are your major stressors, and then what's your stress management technique? So for him, the biggest stressor right now was his health issues. Obviously, he had been really very sick. A second stressor was that he really was not enjoying his new diet. He did feel better, but he really missed his favorite unhealthy foods, and the whole food plant-based low-fat diet tasted really bland to him. He also had really stopped socializing entirely because he wasn't able to go out and he couldn't eat at friends' houses. So normally when he would go out to eat. So he wasn't able to really socialize in the way he normally did because of his diet restrictions. And then the other place where he would socialize was at the Y, and he wasn't able to swim. So he wasn't going to the Y. He denied any significant housing, financial, or relationship issues at that time. His initial answer to how he manages his stress was that he doesn't. He would also swim. That was a really great stress management technique for him, but he couldn't currently do that when I was seeing him. He also really loved going outside in nature, but he was really limited to do that as well because of his health issues and his ability to get around. He does get stress reduction by petting his cats and talking to his partner. And I always ask about spiritual background. Sometimes it's because you want to pull on some of those beliefs, and sometimes it's that you don't want to step on any of those beliefs. But I always like to know what somebody's background is and what their current faith is. And he was Catholic by background, but he doesn't believe in anything anymore, and he's not spiritual at all. So love is the last one, and love is good relationships, but it's also what makes life worth living for you. What do you want to be healthy for? What do you want to be able to do with your health? And what do you want to be alive for? So unfortunately, the first thing that he names on that is food that is bad for him, and he was really missing it. Swimming at the Y, which he couldn't currently do, so a loss there. His friends, who is not seeing because everything they do together centers on food, and he can't do that anymore. So he's just been avoiding his friends. So these his three big sources of things that make his life worth living, he's lost. Some because of his health, and some because of the new diet that he's adopted. And the fourth one as well is going to his pond, which he can't currently do because he couldn't walk there. And mechanics. He loves to do mechanics, which he couldn't currently do because of his health issues. He does mention his life partners and his cats again, things that he loves. So my question here is like, what is the most important pillar to focus on at this time? And then there's a follow-up question, a second question, and these are going to come up in the poll at the same time. So if you could answer these together. And what medication changes would you make that first visit? So Bob, if you can stick those up. We'll give everybody a minute. And then when Bob thinks there's enough of the answers have come in, he will stick up the results.
All right, we have 48% of the first one. And 100% of the second one.
I guess the second one's easier to answer than the first one.
Yeah, where are we for the first one? Still, when we break 50%, let's put it up.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. All right. Kerry, is that what you were expecting?
No, it's not what I'm expecting.
I'm gonna ask Dr. Loomis for his reaction on that first.
So I think stress that's what I think he needs to work on, because we all know that diet and physical activity are important, but when we're not in the right place mentally, when we're not happy, then you're not going to be, as in my experience, my patients, you're not as likely to stick with the program over time. It's much easier to kind of give up down the road. So I think working on the stress piece is what I picked here for that first.
It was funny, but you said it was stress, but what you described was really low. Right.
But I think, well, yeah, but see, I don't think you can separate the two, because I think it's the thing, he can't do the things he likes to do, which is creating the stress. That's the way I frame that. But it's kind of the same thing. When I talk about to patients, I talk about physical health through movement, nutritional health through food, and emotional health through love, stress management, and sleep. I kind of lump those together because those are connected in many ways in my experience. And so, I was framing this the way I frame it with my patients, and it's emotional health, whether it be love, stress. That's what stuck out to me.
I completely agree on that. This is an emotional. We need to work on this guy's emotional state.
Yes.
Jim, what were the three big areas again that you have?
I talk about physical health, emotional health,
right,
and then nutritional health.
Okay.
Those are the domains of wellness, and then environmental toxins, which is tobacco and alcohol primarily, but also things like pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals and antibiotics in our food, because they're connected, right? You can't
Right.
be emotionally well without regular physical activity, and the reason is our stress response evolved to facilitate us performing physical activity. So we get that disconnect, that adrenaline, makes our blood pressure go up. We get anxious, we can't sleep at night. Our mind's racing around, so we don't recover from the stress. The cortisol we're making, one of the things it does is it can raise our blood sugar and also stimulate our appetite and peripherally store reduce belly fat, right? So again, when we create a mismatch between movement and our emotional health, that cortisol now turns against us. It can lead to elevated blood sugar, stress eating, weight gain, on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the connection between diet and physical activity, right? If you think about a car, you don't park your car in the garage for you're not driving, but still put gas in it 5 times a day, right? You don't empty your gas tank and put 30 gallons in a 15-gallon tank. And most importantly, you don't put diesel gas in your car even in moderation, expect it to run, right? If it runs on regular unleaded. And we take better care of our cars than we do of ourselves. And so that's how when I approach a patient, I'm looking at what's out of order in those 3 domains, right? And oftentimes it's the emotional piece that even though that doesn't drive most of our health, it's the one that needs to be fixed, because when we're not emotionally well, we can't focus on the other 2.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. Dr. Stone, Dr. Stone, why don't you answer both those? Because with this, there's the question number 1 and 2 about which medication you would stop as well. But why don't you start with the first one there?
Okay, so I would say that he needs, the pillar I would work on is love, because love is his purpose, and he needs an anchor. And so a lot of our patients that will get started on a plan, but for them to stay on it, they need an anchor, they need a why. And especially since he's finding the diet to be a little bit boring. And he's not having joy in his life. So he really needs an anchor to figure out his purpose and his why. And that'll help him continue on the behavior changes.
Right.
And then,
especially when his why right at that point was, she's making me, right?
Yes, so, he's feeling badgered. Yeah.
Right.
And then I would probably decrease the sliding scale, because I saw that his glucoses were getting a little low, and so I would reduce the sliding scale.
Got it. All right, Dr. Brakey.
Boy, I agree with what's been said so far. It's really that emotion, as Jim described, that emotional realm that supports all the others. It's an interesting exercise. We commonly debate which pillar is most important, which ones here. And of course, the answer is always all of them. And this is a good example of where one is off, where he can't exercise, he can't be with his friends, he doesn't feel supported, he loves the foods he wants, and he can't have them. It compounds everything. So it's good that we are working on, each of them. But I would agree that the biggest issue here, and I chose love, and for the same reason that the stress and love are closely intertwined, that's what will help support him in getting through, keeping with what he's doing well on the sleep and the nutrition, and being able then to get the support he needs to get back to exercise.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Just for the record, I'm a radiologist, and I chose love also. So Bob Ricky, would you, what about the medication adjustment?
I chose B and C. He needed to get not so hypoglycemic and hypotensive. He was getting a classic kind of getting better, but still being treated with medications that were now pushing him too low. So I chose E.
That was my answer too, Ted, for the
Okay,
meds. It was B and C. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was going to go back to you and ask you, but you just, that's great. Thank you. All right, Kerry, why don't you continue, please?
All right, so this is what I actually
What did
did.
the audience? Sorry, the audience on question 2.
Yeah, I think Bob took, Bob, can you put that back by any chance? There we go. The audience chose
In
B and
C.
C.
No, E.
Two-thirds of the audience chose B and C. So stop, reduce the sliding scale insulin and stop the isosorbide.
Okay. Oh, I see. You can scroll it down. Thank you.
Scroll it down. Yeah. And then, yeah.
So that's what I actually did. I think you could have made the argument as well that you could have stopped his amlodipine, because honestly, the isosorbide has a bigger purpose than the amlodipine did. So I think you could have done anything. But what I ended up doing was I changed his insulin sliding scale so that it was 0 units each, if it was under 200, and then just increments of 2 every 50 glucose points above that. And that really makes a lot of sense. Like he was on 8 starting at 150, but he's much less insulin resistant, right? So he had reversed a lot of his insulin resistance. So you need a much lower level of insulin. I had him hold the isosorbide for now, talk to the cardiologist to see if he would prefer that he go back on the isosorbide, but come off the amlodipine, right? So, because it sort of makes more sense. But since that was the last thing that was added, and it really didn't make sense from his story that he should be on it anyway. It was kind of like they gave it extra, even though, because he just couldn't think of when to take the PRN nitroglycerin. So I encouraged him to get back to physical activity as soon as he gets rid of that vest, which I thought was going to happen fairly quickly after that. I can't remember what he said, but to start building up more slowly once he's able to get back into the pool. I think he was going to cardiology in the following like a week or two and thought he was going to get off the vest. We talked a lot about the fact that he's not doing enough stuff that is bringing him joy, and he's going to lose his motivation because right now it's fear and basically harassment from his partner, right? So it's a lot of encouragement from his partner. So do something every day that brings him joy that is not food, right? Trying to realize that joy does not just come from food, it comes from a lot of other places. I encouraged him to start socializing, inviting people over for meals because he likes to cook and his partner likes to cook. So they can certainly start, having people over, and at least they're able to do that piece of the socializing. I asked him to go outside every day that the weather was good enough to do so, or sit by a window looking outside for at least 15 minutes every day. I encouraged him to increase his fruit to 3 to 4 a day. Remember, he was eating 2 to 3, because part of what he was missing was a lot of that sweet kind of stuff that he would tend to go for before. And if we can get him eating more fruit, maybe that's going to be a little bit more of he really liked fruit anyway. He just didn't think he could eat much. So it was one of the things that he did like, and would get him maybe a little bit better taste sensation with it. And encouraged him to use more spices in his cooking. Trying to make the food taste a little bit more exciting to him until his taste buds adjust. So then we're scheduled to follow up with him in about 6 weeks. Before that appointment, I got my care message. So the my care messages always came from his partner, who told me that he is technologically extremely challenged and he doesn't type. So basically, the story was that she was going to set him up for the follow-up video visits. We were planning to do everything else by video after the first visit because they're coming from far away. But she was going to have to handle the video stuff, and she was sending the messages back and forth. So, so she was saying, again, I changed the name here, but Gary was feeling dizzy this morning. He's been sticking to the whole food plant-based Esselstyn diet. He's lost 88 pounds so far. Usually he's feeling good. So just a reminder, this is 88 pounds in 4 months, right? So his blood sugar never goes over 150. However, his blood pressures have been low. It was 74/56 this morning. His heart rate was 66. He's off the isosorbide. Should he still be on all the other medications? So I got back with her for a plan, which was to now hold the amlodipine. watch blood pressures and let me know if they're running under 100/60. He had a follow-up appointment within that next week with a plan that we're going to keep a close eye on him and recheck. However, they had technological issues. They also live in the middle of nowhere and they lost their connection. So they had to be rescheduled, and then partner was going to be away for a number of weeks. And so it ended up being a kind of a longer time until I saw them again. So, but I did also send a message about how thrilled I was that that the patient had embraced the diet so well, and how it's just so stunning how much better people get and how much medication they not only can, but actually have to eliminate, especially with that drastic diet change. And that I was really applauding that he did this despite not having the support of his physician at that time. And then I got another MyCare message, right? Another couple weeks later. And again, it was from the partner. Do you have any suggestions on improving Gary's strength? Soon after starting this diet, he noticed that his arms feel weak. Whoops, I misspelled weak. I am wondering if he is not eating enough. He is only getting around 1,500 calories a day, and he's lost another 17 pounds just in the month of December, bringing the total loss since August to 98 pounds. His blood pressure averages 110/61. He stresses about his blood sugar and eats way less if it gets close to 150. It is averaging 115. So this was really a new thing for me, which basically he was restricting his eating to really low amounts. He wasn't eating until he feels full and satisfied. He's restricting because he doesn't want his sugars to blip. I also gave him some messages back to eat more food, more calories, but only more of the healthy stuff that he's already eating, and especially beans, because they're, kind of, am a little bit concerned about protein at this point because he's just having such a rapid weight loss. So we really want to slow down that weight loss, but he probably is losing some muscle mass here. Goal should be to lose no more than 2 pounds a week, trying to minimize that, to keep exercising as he's able to tolerate, to try to build back muscle strength and stamina. And then, if we need to use some diabetic medications, we can go ahead and do that to keep the sugars where they need to be, but we need him to be checking his sugars twice daily, but eat enough food that you're not losing too quickly. Okay, so then I ended up seeing him for that follow-up appointment. So this will be 4 months after that initial visit with him, right? And 6 months after he started on the Esselstyn diet, 2/21/23. So it was done by video visit for convenience, and they did have a good connection this time. He states he's feeling great. He's continuing to follow the Esselstyn diet. He is down to 258 pounds from a high of 385 when he was hospitalized. So he's down 127 pounds in 6 months. He is water walking and dog paddling for 2 hours, 3 days a week at the YMCA. He has become a bit of a mini celebrity there, and they actually have been putting all of his adventures through this whole thing on YouTube videos and not on Facebook videos and posting them. He also walks on dry land for about 30 minutes 2 other days a week. He never goes more than 1 day in a row without movement. He is somewhat limited by knee pain, but not short of breath. So he can walk for 30 minutes without being limited by shortness of breath. He's really limited by his osteoarthritis, but also notes that his pain is significantly reduced from his baseline. He is off his isosorbide, which was stopped at our first visit. He's off all amlodipine, and despite that, his blood pressures are running 116/121 over 55/66. So they are nice and low, maybe even a little bit too low, but not too terrible. And he had a MUGA scan, and it showed that his ejection fraction went up to 40% from 25%. And he not only no longer needed the implantable defibrillator that they were planning, he doesn't qualify for one anymore. So he's pretty happy about that. He is off all of his insulin, including the short acting. So altogether, he's off over 100 units of insulin between his long and short acting. He's off of the Januvia, and the metformin was cut back by his primary care doc to once daily, who also took him off the Januvia. Despite that, his blood sugars are running 97 to 136 fasting, and they're always under 200 after meals. He came off the omeprazole. He stopped it on his own, but because he didn't need it anymore, he wasn't having any reflux. His atorvastatin was decreased from 40 milligrams to 20. He was not needing the Trelegy or the Ventolin at all anymore, which is kind of interesting to me. He kind of stopped those on his own because he just didn't need them. That maybe some of his shortness of breath that they were thinking was COPD prior was really congestive heart failure. Now that his heart is pumping better, he doesn't need those. And he actually came off his methylprednisolone for his rheumatoid arthritis because his arthritic stuff was not bothering him anymore. So this is the updated medication list from that initial one. And this doesn't include that he was already came off the 80 milligrams of the long-acting insulin, so off a ton of stuff from his original, with reduced doses of his statin and his metformin, in addition to all the things he no longer takes at all. When looking at it as on the action plan, he did absolutely everything I asked him to do. He did just absolutely amazing on all of these things, so I'm not going to go through each of them. The one other thing that for doing things that bring you joy, they set up a bird feeder outside the window so that he could watch the birds and enjoy them on snowy days. And he had, if going to the Y, he's making a whole lot of new friends, which was also really good. He did not start inviting people over yet, and it turns out he lives in a really small house. It's pretty hard to socialize in. I was not aware of that until actually we did the video visit. Then we were able to kind of like see how small his place is. I'm like, okay, I can see why you need to wait so you can have something outside. But his previous friends weren't really supportive of the new lifestyle habits anyway. Definitely the spices helped increase his enjoyment of food, and it really was saying he was enjoying his food a lot now. So doing great for those. And thinking about it in terms of kind of each of the pillars, obviously fingers was already great to start with. Forks, a little bit more fruit, a little bit more vegetables, basically more, right? A couple extra servings, a little bit more whole grains, a little bit more beans. He's encouraged his amount, and he also increased his water amount. So doing really well there. Physical activity was talked about already, so a huge progress with being active. Sleep was already good and it didn't change. Basically, he wasn't stressed about his health anymore. You know, before he's thinking he's going to die any minute, his life is nearly over, and now it's like he's got this whole new life. The not enjoying his diet is still a bit of an issue. He still misses some of his old foods. He still really misses hanging out with his old friends, but he is enjoying his food a lot, his new way of eating a lot more. And at that point, he's not saying that there's any significant stress going on at home. It really was saying that that wasn't really changing. So in terms of stress management, he got a whole bunch of his stress management techniques back again, right? He's able to go outside again. He's able to swim again. It really feels like he's got that back. He still misses the bad for him food, but not as much as he likes, feeling great, and was really able to verbalize that. Yeah, but the friends are still kind of a problem. And he could even do the mechanic stuff again. He was able to, he lost enough weight, he can actually get down and get under the car again to do stuff. So some good progress there. And this was just a quote from Dean Ornish that lifestyle changes are sustainable because what patients gain is so much more than what they give up. So a key point. So this was a transformative lecture that I heard almost 10 years ago from Dean Ornish that made me realize how much that I was doing in medicine was wrong, which was trying to scare people into making changes by saying how much I'm worried about something bad happening to them, rather than focusing on what they want to be doing with their good health. So, and then there's a big plot twist that happened after that. So here's the new plan after that first visit. Keep up the awesome job. Aim for 1 pound of weight loss a week, not more than that. Because they were so worried about that protein thing, I'm like, okay, fine. If you want to do a little bit of plant-based protein powder, if you think you need it, okay. But you shouldn't really need it. Okay to lighten up on the diet a little and rarely, once a month at most, for social occasions, and right back onto the Esselstyn diet. Don't go crazy doing a cheat day. That's what he was kind of talking about. If he's going to do a cheat day once a week and, have 8 beers and kind of hang out with his friends, I'm like, yeah, no, don't do that. But trying to rein that in a little bit. Okay. I wanted to bring up just a couple of take-home points so far from the talk. Even when patients figure out what to do on their own, they need the support of lifestyle medicine docs who can reassure and guide them, especially with medication changes. See patients as soon as possible if they're already making changes and are needing medication adjustments. Ask when a patient is referred or self-schedules if that is something that's already going on with them, and get them in right away if possible. Be available between appointments, especially when med adjustments might be needed to avoid tragedy. These folks were really great about just doing things on their own and reducing it, but this really could have been a nightmare. It could have been quite dangerous if he had not reduced his insulin very quickly or hadn't reached out when his blood pressure was really low. So, okay, and then this is what happened last week. So it was a video visit done 4/11/23. He was down 5 pounds over the 6 weeks prior from when I saw him, but then he gained 7 pounds in the 3 days over Easter. So overall, instead of losing like this, he was losing crazy amounts. He's actually up over the last 6 weeks, 2 pounds. He didn't have any company over for Easter, but he used the holidays as an excuse to buy all of the following: turkey, ham, coleslaw, potato salad. And it wasn't just enough for one meal. His partner, piping in from the background, was saying it was enough to feed him every meal for a week. He just went crazy and bought a ton of stuff. The other thing that was going on at that visit was the patient and his partner were bickering back and forth the whole visit. She's out of the picture in the video, but she's like chiming in, and the two of them are like going at it. The partner is saying that she's planning to move out. They hadn't lived together before he was discharged from the hospital. But she moved in with him when he got home because he was in such bad shape. But they've been together as a couple for 35 years, but she's moving back out. And her quote, this is close, I'm paraphrasing here: "I can't take having to badger him constantly to get him to stick with this. And I can't sit here and watch him kill himself either." Patient says that he hates some of the foods his partner is insisting he eats, and in particular, it was kale smoothies. Does not like those kale smoothies. Patient does like some whole food plant-based foods, and he likes to cook, but he admits to purposely adding tons of spice to it so his partner can't eat it. And I'm thinking, you just don't want her to eat your food so you can have it all, you don't have to make more. But no, he basically admits that it was just for spite because she can't tolerate spice, because of all of her badgering him about the diet. And then the patient, it became apparent that the patient was fully focused on getting down to his goal weight, then plans to return to a much looser diet, although he admits that he has absolutely no control once he starts eating any of the processed foods. And so I'm not going to tell you what I did at that, but I thought this is a good point, a good place to kind of have a group discussion on where to go next with this.
Wow. So thank you for that plot twist at the end there. So Dr. Stone, what is your reaction to this? And what would you do?
What a plot twist. Well, Kerry, I like the way that you gave him positive reinforcement along the way. I think that was great. And I think that helps him stick with his goals. And then I think also with behavior change, often we see our patients do that. They get really excited, they stick with the diet, they have great outcomes, and then they go back a little bit. So that's not atypical. I think the amount that he did was a little bit atypical. And then I think that the other thing I'd probably do is have a chat with the partner, just maybe encourage her to give positive feedback. I think that badgering is getting to be a bit much, and that's probably affecting their relationship.
Right. Well, thanks for that. And before I'm going to call on Dr. Brakey here, but before I do, I just want to point out that for those in the audience who would love to like to present a case to Lifestyle Medicine Grand Rounds, we'd love to have you. And please use this Dr. Graff as an example of how to present a case, because I thought this was a really brilliant presentation, Dr. Graff. So Dr. Brakey, absolutely. What are your thoughts, Dr. Brakey?
Wow, what a plot twist at the end there, Kerry. That was really, you caught us off guard. It seemed like it was happy ending and happily ever after. And then what it illustrates clearly, though, is just like people with addictions. And we've seen it. People who had one patient who had quit smoking for 30 years. And he got a little memory challenge, and he forgot he was a non-smoker, and he went in and bought cigarettes, and he was right back to it. And of course, we've all seen people with alcohol use disorder where they're doing well, they're even in the program, they're teaching it, but something comes along, a party or a stress, and they fall off the wagon, and not just in a little bit. So it's interesting that your slide right before that plot shift gave him permission to just a little bit, maybe once a month on a social occasion, but don't do it for very long and get right back on it. And maybe that doesn't worked for him. It's almost as if that gave him permission to peek in the door, and the foods just came busting through like an overcrowded cabinet or refrigerator, and he couldn't stop himself. And then again, it cascaded to relationship with his partner, badgering, stress, whatever other pillars are going on. He's probably not sleeping well now either. But good for you for kind of saying, hey, let's acknowledge this. Thanks for talking about it, because sometimes he might kind of clam up or cancel the visit or not want to talk to you about it. So somehow he trusted you enough to kind of come out with what was happening. And that's a good sign that he wants to, in my mind, wants to get back going. He recognizes the importance of his future and his ability to do what he wants to do. So I guess my hope is that you can acknowledge it, not make him wrong for it, let him know that it's common for these kind of challenges to come along, dust himself off, and find a way to get started again by setting some new incremental goals. But thank you, fascinating case.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Loomis.
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. I just finished reading for the second time James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And one of the things that really stuck with me about that, and I was certainly guilty of this, between med school and when I went plant-based about 10 years ago, I'd probably gained and lost cumulatively probably 80, 100 pounds, right? I gained 30 pounds. I get mad at myself. I'd set a goal. I'd lose 20 pounds, 25 pounds. And then what would I do when I reached my goal? I would celebrate, right? And I would go back to doing the exact same thing I was doing before. So yo-yoing up and down, because I was focused on outcomes related goals, as it seems like he was. And what Clear talks about is reframing goal setting to process related goals or system goals. So instead of worrying about what the scale weighs tomorrow, worry about what am I going to have for lunch today? What time am I going to go to sleep tonight? How much am I going to move today? How am I going to deal with the next stressful situation I'm in? Because when we focus on the process, that's how we're going to develop new long-term habits, right? And the problem is that, especially around eating behaviors, our eating behaviors evolved for us to navigate a world of food scarcity. And when we're just trying not to starve to death, right? It did not, our brains did not evolve to navigate the world of food plenty, especially surrounded by all these ultra-processed, highly addictive foods that we live in today. So long-term behavior change around food is incredibly difficult, right? And part of it is the way, we make decisions around food. All of our food decisions are learned behaviors: food you like, food you don't like, how you comfort yourself with foods, how you celebrate your food with food, how you, on and on. So where do we learn to eat cake and ice cream at a birthday party, right? We learned that a long time ago. And then that's what we do when we're in that situation. Now you can change that, but it's hard over the long time. And it's kind of like driving, right? You don't get in the car and think about driving. Your subconscious brain's making those decisions for you. And that's allow your conscious brain to look for opportunities and threats for driving. It's cars running the red light, which is why distracted driving is so dangerous. You move to London tomorrow, you got to learn how to drive on the other side of the street. And it takes a long time sometimes to teach yourself to drive, to stay on the proper side of the road. And it's especially hard, though, when you don't drive on the wrong side of the road in moderation, right? Because you only have a moderate number of head-on collisions. Well, nutritionally, the problem is staying on the right side of the road. The head-on collision might take 10 years, 5 years to manifest. So it's very difficult to stay. And I think that's what's happened here. He was driving on the wrong side of the road, and then he kind of drifted to the other side of the road. And because there was no adverse immediate consequence, he's kind of stayed on that side, it sounds like. And so when I talk to patients about this, and it gets back to, we've been talking about purpose. This whole process is like pushing a snowball over the top of a mountain, right? And some people's mountains are really tall and that road is really steep. So how do you get the snowball over the other side because when you do start to lose weight and you start to feel better and you get off the meds, everything kind of snowballs, takes care of itself. And I think there's 3 things people have to do. And I had to do this myself. When I went plant-based 2011, I lost 50 pounds, reverse sleep apnea, atrial fibrillation, high cholesterol, borderline diabetes, on and on personally. And the process I had to go through, that I went through, first of all, it's about finding purpose. And oftentimes we do come at a paradigm of fear, right? You need to lose weight, or you're going to, you need to get your diabetes under control. You're going to lose your toes, or you get your blood pressure down, you're going to have a stroke, get your cholesterol down, you're going to have a heart attack. When people know that stuff, it might motivate them for a week or two, but not long-term. So a different way to frame it is, why would it be important for you not to have these bad things happen? It's finding that purpose, because the answers to why do I not want to have a stroke or a heart attack or cancer is all the same, right? You know, for my kids, my grandkids, my partner, whatever it is you want to be doing. Second of all, it's lowering the slope of the road and the height of the mountain. And, you know, and so I don't know what quinoa is. I eat when I'm stressed out. I don't have a lot of time. I'm on a budget, you know, whatever it might be. There's resources around that, you know, culinary, like what Terry does, culinary classes, we've got, you know, dietitians, things like that. And then lastly, it's creating that support group. You know, we got to recruit as many people as we can to help push the snowball. And I think that part of the breakdown here is he only had one person kind of helping him push the snowball. And when she stopped helping, you know, the snowball stopped moving. So I don't know if those are answers, but I think within that, there's probably some things to think about. And one thing that popped to mind, I might suggest that they get couples counseling, because clearly, because it makes me wonder, is it the you know, chicken, the proverbial chicken or the egg, right? So is it the conflict that's driving his emotional eating and drifting away, or is it his drifting away driving the conflict, right? But I think helping them come to terms with that and through some counseling might be beneficial. But really an interesting case. And one more quick comment, by the way, I was going to say earlier, you know, I'm a big fan of technology, and early on when he was struggling with the sugars and stuff, you know, I'm a big believer in like CGMs, continuous glucose monitors. That's a billable thing. So having him, and I use CGM as a teaching tool. Unlike most, you know, endocrinologists using it to see when you need more insulin. I think it's a great tool to help people understand what happens when I go for a walk after dinner, what happens when I have that little cheat day, what happens on the days I'm stressed out or get a good sleep. And so really, and then, you know, to allay his fears early on that when he ate, it was going to spike his sugars, but really seeing what happens, different foods do what. CGM, the other thing, you know, and now it sounds like they were somewhat like technology first, but you can do the same thing with Wi-Fi enabled blood pressure monitors, right? And then so there's companies like HealthSnap and things like that, where you can set up a portal and you, the clinician, can see that data in real time almost. And to help, I think help, especially a patient like this who had pretty volatile blood sugars and blood pressures early on, using technology like, especially the CGMs. I found that very beneficial in helping reassure people. And then lastly, sometimes, again, I don't know if this patient was the right one, I'll use an app like Chronometer to allay some of the nutritional fears. I'm not getting enough protein, or you know, when they're not responding, oftentimes you say, well, I'm eating perfect, I don't know why my sugars are coming down. And then they do Chronometer and they're getting 60 grams of fat a day and 20 grams of fiber, because our brains don't do a very good job with that. So that's another tool. That's another tool that I like to use. It's kind of a teaching tool. I don't have them do it all the time. Usually I pick a 48-hour window every couple of weeks and just take the average, because it is quite tedious. But getting data to help, instead of saying, well, you know, maybe you should eat a little protein powder, and that's fine. You know, I do that too, but being able to quantify how much protein are you really getting, and then, you know, we have a diet. We're fortunate at PCRM, we have a dietitian, a plant-based dietitian, Karen Smith. So, you know, I can pass all the nutrition stuff to Karen, and that's all done videos, so she can see them. She's almost like a health coach too. So anyway, I'll stop talking now because I feel like I'm rambling on, but.
No, that was great. Thank you, Dr. Loomis. Actually, Dr. Graff, Dr. Brakey, we have 30 seconds here. Dr. Brakey raised the issue about whether it was wise to have said to him, you can go a little bit off the path. What do you think about that, Dr. Graff? Now that you know this gentleman, would that have made any difference if you had said, don't do that?
I don't know, because he was so concerned about, the friends piece was a huge issue for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, it wasn't supposed to be him eating this on his own. It was supposed to be getting together with your friends, going out to dinner, kind of cheating a little bit, right? So we actually talked about that at this appointment. There were two things that came up at this last video appointment, and one of them was
Kerry, why don't you stop sharing now? Okay, we can.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Great, thank you.
One of the things that came up at that last visit that I was trying to sort out between the two of them was that I kind of challenged him, you know, so she's showing how much she cares because she's trying to make sure you get these things into your diet, and she's trying to get you to not eat these other things, and you feel like she's badgering and you're really angry. But if she left and she wasn't badgering you, how would you feel? And he said, well, I feel like she didn't care. And I said, and then what would you do? Well, then I would just eat this stuff anyway, right? And so for him, what he basically said was, like, he had this pause after he said that, and he says, looks like I'm just having making excuses to eat like this. And it was a really defining moment, right? So that made me feel good that at least like he was able to recognize that he's kind of using this as an excuse to do some maladaptive behaviors. And the fact that he admitted to the fact that he's spicing up this food just so she can't eat it, that's like the level of resentment. So what we ended up doing was basically the partner was going to back off and not badger at all. But if he was eating unhealthy things, if she felt she needed to remove herself because it was too difficult to be there, that she would do that. We also talked about, for him, he was able to fully recognize that if he had anything in the house, he would just eat all of it. And so was very able to recognize that he has this addictive personality and that there's just no way that he can get, that if he's going to cheat, that it can't be stuff that he's bringing into the house. It needs to be something he's got to physically go out and get at some point versus having it readily available. So I will often do that at my house. Like I know if there are foods that I can't control myself around, and so they just don't cross the threshold. Because if I'm out, I'm going to eat them in very limited quantities. But if they're home, I'll eat too many.
So actually, I'm gonna ask you to hold up for a minute. So we've gone past the 8:30 mark. So what I'm going to do is just make a couple of announcements. Then we will officially end. But for those of you who want to stick around, I noticed there was a lot of interesting stuff in the chat. Maybe we can bring in some people from the audience. Anyway, I'm just doing a little bit of a promotion for our own programs here. So we try to make it as easy as possible for doctors anywhere in the country or world to help their patients without having to start their own programs. So we run our 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. We run that every month. We've had 1,800 people go through that from 44 states and 9 countries. The LIFT project, and so those are the start dates. We have free information sessions, and also those are the program start dates. The LIFT project with Darren Morton in Australia, we run those as well. Looks like we have a couple coming up, and those are 10 weeks. Those are really a lot of fun, especially for helping people who might be like your patient, Kerry, who know what they're supposed to do, but just don't have the mood or or they're not in the mood for it. And then Pivio, of course, which is the grandfather of all these, the descendant of the Complete Health Improvement Program. So you can follow us on all these various social media platforms. And I'm going to close that now. And how do we do that? Stop share. Just say it was great that everybody was able to come. Thank you so much to our incredibly wonderful panelists and to Dr. Graff for all the work you did preparing this great case. And for those of you who have to get off now, you will be receiving about a half an hour or so, you'll be receiving an email with a link to a survey. If you take that survey, you'll then be able to claim your 1 CMA of credit. So now I would officially like to say goodbye. And if people want to stick around, stick around. And then it goes for our panelists if you'd like to hang around as well. So anybody in the audience want to be called on, go ahead and raise your hand. If I understand if people have to leave, we have 50 people or so in the audience. Dr. Loomis is yawning, but I think he we're keeping him up. Yeah. There was, go ahead, Dr. Loomis.
No, I was just going to say I can hang out for a few more minutes, but I do need to get going. I've got a busy day tomorrow, and I've got to do some stuff. So
sure, no, I appreciate that. I'm curious about the muscle loss and whether you think it's losing 2 pounds a day is too much. I mean,
yeah. So I thought about that, and I think a couple comments about that. It makes you wonder how much of that was water. How much did he diurese? Because if his EF went from 25 to 40. And you have to imagine his sleep apnea got better, all of those. And if he's consuming less salt as he moved on. So I have a feeling that a fairly significant of that water weight loss. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't really worry too much about again, I've really started to think more about helping people with the process, and the weight will kind of end up take care of itself. And so, but again, but that being said, I think it is important that he's not, because of his fear of his sugars, that he's not getting protein malnourished. I mean, so again, that's where that like the chronometer would come into place. That's where I would use something like chronometer just to be sure. And the other thing, I don't know, Kerry, I don't know if he was doing it, but oftentimes in patients like this, I'll have him get just a set of resistance bands and sit by the computer and just do, 5 minutes kind of thing. And the other interesting thing about activity, by the way, this is a very important point that's just kind of I've come around to. As human beings, we evolved to be physically active, right? But physical activity wasn't a willful event, right? I mean, if we didn't hunt and gather fruit or run away fried lepers, we didn't last very long. And now in the modern world, because we don't have to do that anymore, physical activity has devolved into what we now call exercise, right? And we've come to view it as a discrete event. I have to put on special clothes and go to a special place and do a special thing, and it starts and it stops. We have a tendency to do that or not do anything, right? Not recognizing that there's lots of ways to incorporate physical activity into your day-to-day routine, which may not involve exercise. What do you think about it? So I always ask patients, when you can't, we're on the 4th floor. Did you take the elevator? Did you take the stairs, right? So it all counts. And it's even been shown that 5 to 10 minute blocks of activity accumulated through the day are just as effective as, say, 30 minutes continuous. So for a patient like this, I tell them, if you go outside for 1 minute for 2 minutes, then go outside for 2 minutes, right? And then next week, go 3 minutes. And then the next, pretty soon you're at 5 minutes. And it sounds like he did that from your presentation, Kerry, as he moved through. But I think sometimes people feel like, well, if I can't go, run around the block, then it's not worth doing. And it's a very important point, I think, to help patients understand that it's about physical activity, exercise being one form of that, if you will.
I think that's a great point. Dr. Sunderman, I was going to call on you anyway, and your hand went up.
All right. Hi, Dr. Loomis and Dr. Graff.
Hey, how are you?
Panelists, everyone. So question for you, Dr. Loomis. So I am now at Canyon Ranch. We use CGMs a lot, our guests. And it sounds like you do too. What I struggle with is that some really good things, full of fiber, full of phytonutrients, can sometimes bump that CGM, like cut grapes, strawberries, bananas. And so I'm coming back saying, well, Dr. Sunderman, I learned I cannot have oat. Oops, I don't know what happened there. So I'm wondering how you respond to this and to give me some tips what to do.
Well, so it's interesting. Sometimes what I find is some people, when they're first getting, so they come in insulin resistant, right? And most of them are, right? And so what will happen is oftentimes when you introduce some of these higher glycemic index fruits and such early on, it'll spike their sugars because they're still insulin resistant, right? So what I tell them is just work through it. I promise you, your A1C in 3 or 4 months is going to be a lot better. But if you can just stick with it, what you'll find is pretty soon those CGM spikes will dampen down as they start to reverse their insulin resistance. So that's a common phenomenon, and sometimes you just have to talk patients through it because they're so obsessed with their sugars. And I try to explain to them that so what I do is what we do, by the way, is we have them all linked up. We have a BMC, we have a portal. So once a month, I meet with the patients and go through their CGM data at one-on-one, and sometimes every couple of weeks if it's somebody that I'm really working to get off insulin and we're worried about nocturnal hypoglycemia and such as that. But that's how I usually address it. And again, almost always those sugar spikes will improve as their insulin resistance resolves.
Yeah. And it's just trying to counsel them that I know when you have bacon, it doesn't go up. And I know when you have cheese, it doesn't go up.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. And we're using the CGMs on a lot of non-diabetic. Sort of
interesting.
No, I agree. I think it's just sort of reframing and we're looking for long. So
yeah, no, it's interesting. I hear all the time about, well, I went on a ketogenic diet and my sugars got better, right? So I like to frame diabetes and insulin resistance with the kitchen sink model, right? The drain in your sink is clogged. You left the water on overnight. There's water on the floor, right? So how do you fix it? You get out a mop up the water. You might need 2 mops, mop the sugar, you put it away. Now you got to get the mops back out. later on to the RLMI is going to fix the problem, right? So the real problem is the clogged drain. That's fat, intramuscular triglyceride, the waters, the processed sugar, processed grains, all the stuff driving the need for insulin, which is why a whole food plant-based diet, works. Pre-diabetes, same thing. Drugs, drains clogged, water's on the sink, just hasn't overflowed. Ketogenic diet works but you're only taking care of half the problem, because what you're doing is turning off the water. In fact, you're probably clogging the drain worse. So insulin resistance will get worse, after a ketogenic diet. And when they refeed, oftentimes their sugars will go through the roof. And so just helping people understand that the mechanism, because again, we're focused on, it's kind of like this whole process, outcomes related versus process related goal setting, right? When the goal is to get your sugar down, as opposed to the process to get your sugar down over the long run, those are two different things. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I think we need to make a book of Dr. Loomis's imagery. He's got the sink filling up with fat in the drain.
Yeah.
You have the snowball over the mountain, right?
driving on the wrong side of the road.
Driving on the wrong side of the road. You can only do that so many times, right?
That's right.
Exactly. Okay. Well,
Ted, if I could
please.
comment on the muscle too. I had one of my patients lose about 80 pounds and he complained that he lost strength and muscle. And indeed he did. I mean, it doesn't take as much muscle to carry him around anymore.
Right.
And this guy, he was basically, every time he stood up, he had a 126-pound backpack. Now, if he wanted to maintain that same muscle mass, he would put on a 126-pound backpack and stand up and down 80 times
Squats,
a day.
right.
So I kind of help people see that whether it's bone density or muscle mass, it doesn't take as much muscle or bone to hold up a giraffe as an elephant. And people similarly, their muscle, their bone kind of go to what they use it for. And if they want to, if they can do that, like Jim said, bench pressing or bands or other, if they want to maintain the muscle, they can, but it's not as necessary as when they just needed that to even just walk across the room or get out of bed.
That's a great point. Yeah.
The second thing that I think is really interesting about this case is how fast you can reduce the need for insulin and hypertensive meds. Intramuscular lipid is the first to mobilize. It takes a long time to get the adipose tissue down, and the endothelium begins to recover and form nitric oxide. So we need to discontinue the iflosorbide, the insulin, pretty quickly in these people. And I think that's one of the messages that kind of last to add on is the first to go. And one way that accelerated for him was his semi-starvation diet. He's kind of getting only 12 to 1,500 calories a day, mobilized it even faster. So yes, a fascinating case in so many ways. Thank you, Kerry.
I wonder if part of that decreased calories was also driving him to want to binge later, right? So I always tell people never let yourself get more than a 7 out of 10 on the hunger scale. Always intervene before then, because once you hit an 8, you've lost control. And I think he was able to kind of skimp on calories for so long, and then it just wasn't doable. I think he really, by focusing on that number on the scale and then focusing on the sugar numbers, kind of shot himself a bit in the foot on what works for long-term sustainable change. So I should have pushed back harder on that earlier. I didn't mind so much the rapid weight loss in the very beginning, because I thought probably a whole heck of a lot of that was water weight. But by that next section of visits, I should have picked up that was way too much and backed off, trying to get him to back off on that.
Yeah, it's just really not, the muscle loss isn't protein deficiency. Remember, we recycle 100 grams a day of protein, which by definition is made of the same amino acids that it came from. And so you really only need another 30 to 50 grams a day, especially for a guy who's not really working out much. I mean, he's getting back to exercise, but his level wasn't athletic performance wise. So, it's so common that people think, oh, I'm protein deficient. And I think it's fine to give him a little protein powder if it helps him feel better, but much better to encourage beans and quinoa and broccoli. Right. And those are the best quality protein because they match in with what we need, are less inflammatory. They don't stimulate IGF-1. I mean, we all know that inflammation and blood flow and insulin resistance are the result of the standard American diet. And this guy had all three.
Yeah, protein is actually the topic of our first Doc and Chef episode, which just dropped on Sunday.
Yeah, so many, yeah, go
Can you
ahead.
guys, can you guys talk a little bit more about? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Who's that?
Oh yeah, that'd be great for him too. A nice culinary medicine class because
Right.
he learned.
I thought that
spice.
too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He uses spices not for spite.
Mhm.
Right.
Can you guys talk a little bit more about the protein powder? Can that be counterproductive? I mean, because we have people ask us all the time, should I be consuming protein powder? We always tell them no, but now I'm
Well,
wondering.
So, I mean, the problem is, first of all, protein, we just don't need to worry about it, right? I mean, we should be talking about fiber. We always talk about protein. We should talk about fiber. Average American gets twice as much protein as the average person gets around 100 grams of protein a day. And unless you're running marathons and stuff, you don't need anywhere near that much. And, we get 15, 20 grams of fiber. And so the problem with using the protein powders is, as Bob already said, it's the package it comes in, right? You're not getting the fiber, you're not getting the phytonutrients, the antioxidants, on and on and on. So I don't recommend protein powder at all. Now, if you're training for an Ironman and you're trying to get extra calories, and did I use a little protein powder on occasion when I did my Ironman? Yeah, a little bit, but it wasn't extra protein. It was replacement. And then what I ended up starting to do was putting white beans in my smoothies as opposed to protein powder. I finally figured that out just because it tastes neutral. So I switched toward the end from protein powder to white beans.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole protein myth evolved out of the isolated nutrient kind of, whether it's a macronutrient or micronutrient, that we think we figured it out better than nature. Oh, better than what food provides, we give extra vitamin C or protein or medium chain fatty acids or whatever it is, omega-3, DHA, EPA, get it from food. That's when it comes along with all the other components that nourish your microbiome, as Jim mentioned, that provide micronutrients and phytonutrients that help it to work better. So yeah, protein powder is just an isolated nutrient that can be counterproductive, and especially for people that may be susceptible to inflammation, chronic kidney disease, osteoporosis, even though it's not as harmful as the animal-based proteins, which are higher in cysteine and methionine and leucine, it's still excess protein that people don't need.
That's right.
And there was a study a couple of years ago when they looked at protein powders and they noticed there was a large amount of contaminant, particularly mercury.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
I haven't been able to find a plant-based protein powder that's not loaded with sugar.
Right.
So.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Kluger, you got your hand up. Where'd she go? There she is. You're muted.
I'm still here. I'm here. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you so much, Dr. Graff. Excellent presentation. One of the other things I was thinking about, and sometimes I think we may not be necessarily really trained appropriately, even with our medical background, in the psychological part of the whole thing. I mean, he was a very large gentleman when all this started, which brought on, he's 62 years old, he has diabetes, he has heart disease, EF of 25%. But all the dynamics that came up as you were discussing with the partner, his life partner for 35 years, I'm wondering how much of that stems back to early childhood trauma, such as a very overbearing father or mother that caused him to have these unhealthy lifestyle habits in the first place that set him up to have all these issues. So as all these changes that he's making and all these other things, is that trauma and that stuff going to continue to drive what happens in the future if he doesn't work through that? I mean, he can start eating healthier, he can do all these different things, but the behaviors that he's showing, like he's trying to drive someone who cares about him away. Maybe he was abandoned when he was younger or something by a parent or something. And now that somebody's starting to show that they actually care about him, he's actually pushing them away. So what, I guess I look at, what other resources are there for maybe this trauma or psychological part that maybe he needs a little more assistance with that he's not getting? Because obviously we're set up to do a lot of stuff around nutrition and recommending things for exercise and activity, but that piece is so central. I mean, I see it in a lot of different people and populations where there's there is a definite trauma, and this brings up stuff for people. So how can we address that piece, I guess, is what I'm thinking about.
No, I think about that point a lot for women, right, who have a sexual abuse history. They'll lose, they lose the first 20 pounds and they're feeling really great, and they lose any more than that. And it just triggers all kinds of feelings of insecurity. And that's kind of at the forefront of my brain all the time when I'm working with women, but I haven't been very in tune thinking about kind of in men, if there are habits like this, if this is a food battle that happened in childhood or abandonment issues that happened in childhood. And I really need to, so I really appreciate that point. That was great. I put it in my little notes, and I will make sure that I talk about that with him next time.
Wow, good
I did also
question.
schedule him for quicker follow-up.
Yeah.
So this one is like a 4 weeks from the last one. So it'll be, hopefully it'll go okay. So
And maybe have them sign up for the Lift project, get weekly support. So that'd be kind of cool. Anyway, listen, it's 10 minutes to 9, and I really appreciate everybody hanging around for this, because I think we could spend hours more, but we all have to go to work tomorrow. So thank you again to all of our panelists and our presenters and people who participated in the audience. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Next month with Dr. Wayne Deisinger as our guest panelist. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
for hosting this, Ted.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks
Thanks,
for having me.
everybody.
Pleasure.
Appreciate all your comments.
All right,
Great
bye-bye.
job, Kerry. That's
Thank you. Good to see you,
Thanks,
Terry.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.